Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh Hassan.
Alaikum salam, Moutasem.
So we're at the Pearls of the Quran conference, and you just finished a session. It was a panel discussion with Imam Dawoodiya and Shaykh Yasser Fahmi, and you were talking about who carries the banner of Islam. And you closed off on a really interesting point. You were talking about the concepts of morality and what we can do to protect our hearts from the degradation of morality, which is the standard of our religion. And you were talking about some of the vices that will take away morality from a human being. Can you talk to me about them?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Mr. Moutasem, I am extremely happy to be with you. I miss you so much.
Allah, we feel the same way, Sidi.
So much.
We love you.
Same way, Sidi, same way. I think the first thing that we have to pay attention, whether we are activists or we are imams or parents or Muslims in general, is to know the magnitude and the magnitude of the danger of this relativism in morals.
Okay.
Now everybody, this idea that you can make your own morals, and everybody has to accept them.
Right.
Everybody has to accept them because that's how you feel and that's who you are, and we have to accept you the way you are. And this is not something that started today. This is something that's coming up from the early of the century, when we have from the Enlightenment, and it's coming up. And as you see, I'll give you an example. Some of the ideas that you see the shifts in society. Nothing is constant. No morality is constant.
Right.
In the 60s, even at the boom of the openness, if you will,
Right.
only 30% of Americans considered same gender relationship something that is acceptable. Right now, more than 62% of the Americans see no problems with that, including conservatives, including religious people.
So there's a shift in what they're accepting as moral.
There is a shift in accepting what's moral. So now, as society goes, morality is never constant. Is never the core around which the whole society is evolving. And I can give a lot of other examples. Some of them from the political arena and so on. But what concerns us is that this discourse in here is so subtle, going to our kids in schools, going to us into the media, into social media and so on and so forth.
Into
that
the shopping stores.
You find extremely religious people, and they adopt this view, and they are really religious and they adopt this view, and they're hit when their kids start practicing it in the sense that it's okay to have relationships that are illicit. It's okay to have. There is nothing wrong with that. So what do we do with that? How do we deal with that? So the first thing is to recognize the seriousness of the problem. There is no time in the history of humanity where we saw the erosion of morality in the same rate as we're seeing it in the last few decades. We have to understand that this is our serious problem. Not just the problem of Christianity or Judaism, this is our serious problem as well. Once we recognize the magnitude of the problem, we have to devise ways of dealing with it. Again, our tradition is so beautiful and it provides us with so many tools to deal with this. We just need to adhere to it, just to consult it in the most beautiful way. The whole issue of tarbiyah and suluk is about that. Is to create a human being that have a taste that is extremely sensitive to sin, extremely sensitive to immorality, and the constants of our morality comes from the Quran and the Sunnah, and it comes from the carrier of that banner, the carriers of the scholars and the awliya and the arifin, who really represent that, because these morals are not just ideals written in a book. These are ways of life that our scholars, male and females, are embodying. So the first thing is companionship. The first thing is that we have to look for the people who empower us with their silence as much as they empower us with their speech. The people who embody those morals, who strengthen our wills to go against the world, even if our morality is touched. And go through the world and go into the world with such a pride that we embody the morality of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
This is very interesting because, growing up here in the States, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially the late 90s, I think one of the direct products, or we could even say the byproducts of the Salafi movement, was to eradicate this sort of spiritual system. Like these things that you're talking about, the concepts of ihsan and tasawwuf, and taking morality from this people, the Salafi movement did away with that.
Yeah.
Said, you don't need any of that. And then what did we have left was just, here I am, picking up the Quran, picking up the Sunnah, interpreting it in my own way, and coming up with whatever I felt at the moment was okay. Whether it was moral or not, I couldn't judge because I became my own gauge.
One of this is the calamity that happened into the Muslim community. Dr. Jackson called it the generation of ugly. The generation of ugly is the generation that did with every single thing beautiful in our deen, at the core of which is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is intimate, and there is intimate, and there is personal, and that relationship that brings us to a community of awliya, community of righteous, and community of the salihin, communities of people who embody the dhikr, who embody those beautiful characters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I think that there are residues of that still in the Muslim community. The emphasis on halal and haram in every single term. In our masajid, our religious discourse is centered on law. We have to, I don't say we have to sideline the law, but we have to put it in its place where it functions, it works, it gives its fruit, but it prevents us from its negative results.
Which is interesting because my readings of Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah, Qaddasallahu sirruh, was that the law was just there, put down by Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik, and the great Imam, just to safeguard the spirituality.
Absolutely.
It wasn't that came first,
absolutely,
and the spirituality was second.
Absolutely.
That these Imam Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, and Imam Malik were spiritual giants whose law was just to safeguard their spiritual practices.
Absolutely. And that's why when you look at the students that they produce, Ibn Qasim rahmatullahi ta'ala, one of the students of Imam Malik, this man was, you look at his biography in Sir Alam Nubala, and he says, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, little of the ilm with a lot of wara is extremely beneficial. And he said a lot of ilm with a little of wara is not beneficial at all.
And wara being scrupulousness.
Being scrupulousness and paying attention to the spiritual side of things. Not just paying attention to the parameters of Islam. We have to pay attention to tasting Islam. We have to pay attention to the beauty of Islam in our houses, in our families, in our encounters with Muslims and non-Muslims. That's where the challenge is. It's in morals and in ethics, and that's what the suluk and the talks of ihsan come to play. We have to revive that. We have to centralize it in the Muslim discourse. There is a need in every tradition right now is challenged, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Christianity, whether, and we can go on and on about the challenges that they have in this regard, right? Christianity right now, as you can see, this is not to bash any tradition. It's just these are challenges that others are going through that we have to learn from. This is just a descriptive. This is a descriptive discourse. This is not impunitive. This is just descriptive. And you look, there is a legalization of same gender marriage, and so on. And that discourse is overwhelming and weighty, extremely weighty, even on Catholics. You see, for example, Catholics voting for 61% for Trump. That's not a political stance. That's a moral stance.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Right. So what gotten this tradition to slip to this degree? So these are lessons that we have to learn from. We are the only hope in America right now. I see it as the only hope who can carry the banner of morality in this country, and this is our time. So the idea that I wanted to go in, yes, we are swimming against stream for sure, but when did the Prophet ﷺ had a time in which he was not swimming against the stream?
All the time. So
we have to carry the banner of resistance, which is a very new we're a very new spot, very new chair for us. It's not a new.
We don't like the feel of it.
Exactly.
You know, I don't like to feel to be the outcast. I want to fit in.
But you know, other communities have done it for so long. We just
Right.
need to adapt to what they have done. We have to learn. Like African American community have been in that spot for a very long time. If we go back and learn from what they have gone through and how they did it, we can be an extremely strong resistance, a moral resistance.
And a simple example of this, you know, I used to work my IT 9-to-5 job, and I wouldn't drink, and my friends who were Muslims, of course, we didn't drink, but then they would have happy hours.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of my Muslim coworkers would go to the happy hours, and I would say, listen, as soon as you start to give
Absolutely.
a little, you're going to give a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And a little bit time from now, you're going to find yourself in a space, in a place, morally, that you never imagined yourself being.
Absolutely.
So you have to keep those safeguards.
See, you know, we are geared to look for ease. We're geared to look for acceptance. We're geared to look for conviviality, right? The reality is we have to make a stand. We have to hate the word compromise in the moral areas. Compromise means that you put yourself in a slippery slope and you don't know where is that going to end. That we're already losing a lot of youth to compromises. We're already losing a lot. We're not talking about small numbers. We're talking about 15%, 20% of our youth are already lost to the discourse of just do whatever you want to do. Right? 10%. We're talking about 10% have issues of atheism and have issues of and it starts from that relative view of the world. Like every tradition is the same. Right. Every religion is the same. We have to stand out.
So this is one of the things I've noticed over the past 2 years, that there's definitely been a theological attack on, is what you just mentioned, these concepts of perennialism. It all goes. Doesn't matter.
It all goes, yeah.
And then there's been a morality attack on Islam. It all goes. Don't worry. I've even seen some pseudo scholars try to use usul to justify some of the most strange practices happening that even normal conservative Christians themselves would never do. But I've seen that here in America with the Muslims. So I think, yes, we have to start putting those safeguards back on. No, it does not all go. No, it's not all right.
Absolutely.
Here are the basics. These are the practices. This is what defines us. So Shaykh Hassan, my question to you is, of the muhlikat, of those things that can corrupt and destroy someone's moral fiber and moral being, what would you say 2 or 3 in our limited next 5 to 10 minutes that we have together are things that we should all be on the lookout for?
Allah Ta'ala alam, I think the first one that gotten Satan to what he became. Pride. Pride institutionalized in the heart of a youngster creates a shield, an impregnable shield that doesn't allow them to accept anything from our tradition. Because they know better, because they experienced better, because their friend don't think this, and they become the authority. I don't think this verse is right. I don't think what the Prophet ﷺ, what he said is this is not acceptable. What the Prophet ﷺ has done about this, what he said about that, and they become the judge. And we have to create from very early on. We have to invest in the heart of our children, not in the halal and haram, but in the matters of iman. And at the center of the matters of the iman is submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and humbleness. And if we don't show it to them, and if we don't see it in us, in the way we deal with the do's and don'ts of the Quran, the obligations, the stipulations, when we interact with each other, they're never going to get it. Our discourse of morality and our discourse of creating a humble being, which is really working against the grain, because all society is pushing our kids to become like, you have to be the loudest voice out there.
Egotistical monsters.
Exactly. Exactly. The first lesson that my daughter learned when she went to kindergarten is me and myself and I. That's the first class. The institutionalization of the philosophical idea of the autonomous self. You are an autonomous morally, and you are an autonomous in every single way, and you don't need anybody, and the collective doesn't matter. The family is just utilitarian. Just work for you a certain part, and then that's it. You are on your own. You can do whatever. You create your own destiny. You create your own thing, and so on. So this message is appealing to our youth who are yearning to fit in, who are yearning to make something of themselves. And we have to be extremely adept in making the prophetic example and the humbleness appealing to them. You will achieve a lot being a humble person. And we have to show them models, we have to show them examples. And our discourse should not just be, humbleness is good. It has to be adept. It has to be way more sophisticated, because the visual and the audiovisual that they are bombarded with is way more sophisticated than our direct do's and don'ts. Those don't work anymore. You have to be way more sophisticated. That's the first thing. Tackling the Satanism in our hearts. The first in the hearts of our youth. The first thing is pride. The second thing is creating reverence in our homes. Bringing reverence to the hearts of our youth. Again, a heart that has reverence in it will always come back, no matter how far they are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. No matter how, but they still have that humbleness and reverence for the parents, reverence for the tradition, reverence, even if they are afflicted by certain desires in here and desires in there, they'll come back. There is chance for them, there is hope for them. But those who don't have reverence, don't have adab, they lose their adab, they lose their reverence and their ihtiram and taqdeer. It's very hard to bring back somebody who lost reverence, lost respect to the tradition.
But this is so ingrained. I'm sorry to cut you, but this is so it's ingrained in society. Even in some workplaces now, you see workers who don't even have that sort of reference for their manager.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's my boss. What's the big deal? What do I care?
One of my students went to, when I was teaching in the Islamic school, went to another school, to a public school, and I asked her, "How is school?" So the first thing that she said, she's like, I went to the classroom and I heard F-bombs all over the places. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? From an Islamic school to that environment.
Right, yeah.
And I complained to the teacher and she said, as long as I do it, everybody can do it.
See, there you go.
Right? So this is the models that our children are seeing. And even in our community, even in growing up in workplaces, in work environments, compromising with that and compromising with filth and compromising with irreverence in every single part is something that is destroying the fabric of society. We have to be there to make sure to safeguard that. We have to make sure that the way we talk to people, even if we disagree with them, has reverence for the human being, for the soul that Allah Ta'ala blew in them. We have to bring that reverence to environment, reverence to every single thing that Allah Ta'ala created. When we create that awareness, the human being that produced through this environment is a human being that is, no matter what they do, they'll come back.
Right.
They have that reverence in them. The last thing is, I think that at the core of every single goodness is the love of the Prophet. If we lack our love of the Prophet, love of the Prophet contains all of that and more. Every single thing is encompassed in that love of the Prophet. We create an environment as parents and as teachers and as community workers and as imams and as individuals. Anytime we centralize the Prophet ﷺ and we create that deep love in the hearts of the people around us, and we talk about the Prophet ﷺ with that endearment and with that deep love, I think it becomes contagious. And when the love of the Prophet ﷺ is in the heart, no worries. You know what I mean? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the person. They go far and then they come back. One of our teachers, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, used to say that the love of the Prophet is like a chain connected you to the Prophet. And that chain, sometimes you run far away, but the edge of that chain is in the hand of the Prophet. No matter how far you go, it pulls you back and you're back. You know what I mean? And we have to be adept in doing that. We have to be extremely adept in teaching the shama'il and the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. We have to make it extremely speaking to the realities of people. We have to make sure that it brings meaning to their realities. It talks to their social, cultural issues. It shouldn't be just a chronological resume of events and deeds and things and actions of the Prophet ﷺ. So we have to bring the soul into it, and that's how the Sahaba and Tabi'in and Tabi'in and the righteous really safeguard the faith of the ummah by really making that love extremely ubiquitous throughout society. Like my aunt, she's 90 years old, 96 years old, and she's illiterate. She never read, she doesn't, and you cannot stop her the moment she speaks about the Prophet ﷺ. When did she get that? I mean, she didn't have a Shaykh, and she didn't have. It was imbued in society. So this is our challenge in America and in the West, is to create a culture that centralizes the Prophet ﷺ from the lowest level of the populist imagination of religion to the elite. And that's the challenge, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. We pray to Allah Ta'ala to enable us to be agents of that.
Ameen, barakallah fiqh. Thank you so much for taking this time. I know how busy you are here at the conference, and I know there's a huge line of people waiting outside to speak to you, and they're still probably waiting there. We have to get you back to them. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your words of wisdom, and inshallah we'll continue this conversation at another time.
Allah Ta'ala reward you. I cannot thank Al-Madina Institute enough. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put barakah in what Al-Madina does. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it an extension of the prophetic lights I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put barakah and tasir and ease in every single thing that the brothers and sisters of Medina are doing. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit the ummah from the khair that comes out of what Medina is doing. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. We ask Allah ta'ala to unify our hearts and keep us always in the path of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen, walhamdulillah.